Hello, students. This is your answering questions help for data analysis 4. And so we have our output here. And I'm going to go over it. So in this analysis, we have 3 outcome variables and 3 independent variables. So there's going to be 9 main effects. Now, it's important that you understand, I don't want to repeat kind of what was on the organized data and organize the data and running the analysis video, but it's important that you know what everything is. So first of all, the output variables, the outcome variables, the dependent variables, revenue, and then we did trip conversion, and then we did demo conversion. Those are the 3 outputs. So revenue is kind of natural. It's provided, you know, any good, decent shopping cart will provide Google Analytics. Is Google Analytics ready? Somebody comes into your website, they buy something, you ship it to them, and we get whatever the revenue is, what they pay, not counting taxes and shipping if they pay for the shipping. But basically, it's what they pay, what they gave us in terms of money. And then we have cost of goods sold. We have profits. Now, as it turns out, I originally wanted to use profit as one of the outcome variables, and there are different cost of goods sold. In other words, there are different markup regimen. The bigger ticket items have lower markups as a percentage of cost than the smaller ticket items, which almost all have what we call a keystone markup. It's where it's doubled. Whatever it cost them $10, they sell it for $19.99. Cost $8, they sell it for $15.99. So those are the 3 dependent variables: signing up for a trip, signing up to go to a demo day, which is where you go out and you get to test out some of the equipment and things that they have, and then revenue. So those are the 3 outcome variables. The independent variables are campaign, content, and picture. And campaign, real quick, campaign, there's 2 different types of campaigns, and Google AdWords is organized that way. The account structure is campaigns, ad groups, ads, and your keywords go with into different ad groups. So the first campaign focuses on keywords that relate to fishing. So it has fishing keywords. The second campaign has eco-touring keywords, and we kind of rotated how those 2 campaigns were running and tried to keep it fairly even in terms of when they were running and how much budget we had for each one and everything over the time period of this test. It's not really an A/B test, but it's one we set up ourselves to be the equivalent of an A/B test. So the second independent variable is the type of content. So that's the actual copy that went into the ads. The actual copy that went into the ads. And I shared my screen. You can see the kind of the independent factors here and the outcome factors down here. So we have revenue, trip conversion, demo, and then we have campaign, content, and picture as the independent variables, the fixed factor independent variables. Content refers to the copy in the ad. So we had, in this case, we A/B tested 2 different types of content. One type of content was utilitarian. Accessories, tricking out your kayak, function, all these little things that you can do to make stuff work better and things like that. Practical, functional stuff. The other type of content focuses on the aesthetics. Like 10 different places, 10 different great places within an hour of Tallahassee that you've never been. Tallahassee is the biggest city in the area of the Forgotten Coast where this the focal entity is, the store. The third type of third independent is picture. We A/B tested 2 different types of pictures. One was a river picture and the other was an inshore. And I believe 1 is an inshore picture and 2 is a river picture. So 1 is fishing, 2 is eco-touring for campaign. And that's the type of keywords that were used in the campaign. The content of the ads, utility, 1 is utility and 2 is aesthetics. The picture, 1 is inshore and 2 is river. So the first question asked, what are the main effects? And actually, the students over the years really, really, really have a hard time with main effects. This particular data set is one of my favorite just because it has such tremendously robust interactions. And the independent variables that work really well for one type of outcome variable don't work as well for the next type of outcome variable. So that's one of the reasons that I like the data set. And there will be statisticians sometimes that tell you, well, you don't need to look at the main effects if there's interaction. That's not true. There are, we do want to know overall, and this is a small business, and they want to know which, okay, so we tested on which one works better. On an average across all of the other variables, which one works better. So there's a couple things that aren't happening here. We're not comparing the independent variables to each other, and we're not comparing the independent variables. So we're not comparing campaign to content. And because you have to, in Data Assignment 5, make a presentation about this output, it's important that you say it correctly. Effect of the independent variable on the dependent variable. You don't say the effect of revenue. Revenue is, revenue causes a very high campaign. No. One of the two types of campaigns has a statistically significant effect on revenue. So if that's significant, that means one of those two campaigns works better on average. Once you see and you look and you determine, for example, the campaign does not have a significant relationship to demo conversion. It's it, you're done with it. But where you see, so there's 9 total, and it's in this last box that you're going to look at, significance of F. These are the kind of univariate between subject effects. If this thing tells you that revenue is significantly related to campaign is significantly related to revenue, I almost told y'all not to do. Campaign is significantly related to revenue. What that means is that one of those two types of campaigns works better than the other on average. Then you have to look at the picture. So let's take one of the ones that has a very strong relationship. Let's look at the effect of campaign on trip conversion, because that's really strong. And let's look at the effect of content on revenue. So first let's do, because that's our first grasp of revenue, let's look at the effect of content on revenue. So what that's basically asking you is the blue line higher than the red line? Remember last time we did this, we had a marginally, okay, I'm on YouTube, so I got to be careful. You cannot say marginally significant on YouTube without somebody giving you a hard time about it. It's either significant or it's not, according to your pure statistical type. Although even in journal articles, you'll hear somebody say marginally significant. But we had that 0.044 significance, and the blue line was just a little bit above the red line, which meant that the blue line, which represents, in this case, utility and whatever it represented, I think it represented new content. There were weeks when we had new content. The blue line's higher than the red line. So what you're looking for is the blue line higher than the red line and the red line higher than the blue line. And so it's pretty obvious here that in not every situation, but on average, across these 4 data points, the utility outperforms aesthetics in terms of generating revenue. Now, if we look at the same situation with trip conversion, here they're about the same, but in this one, because we get this big, interaction effect, this big effect of aesthetics being higher than the red line for aesthetics being higher than the blue line, in this particular case, aesthetics outperforms utility in terms of generating trip conversions. And here it was the opposite. When we looked at revenue, utility outperformed. So there's 9 total main effects. You've got to tell me all 9. I think it's easier. The way this is set up, it goes campaign with revenue, trip conversion, demo conversion. It's easier for you to explain and wrap your head around if you go outcome variable by outcome variable. We do not care about the intercept. So revenue and campaign significant. That means one of those two campaigns does better. Campaign has a significant relationship to trip conversion. One of those two does better. You've got to tell me which one is better. Campaign does not have an effect on demo conversion. You're done. And you say it's not significant. That's it. You don't have to talk about it anymore. The same thing for these others. So I already went through and I told you the effect of content on trip conversion and we looked at content on revenue. And, the blue line's higher. Now, when it comes to looking at, and then picture, we only have one main effect, and that is for trip conversion. So it's not related to things. In terms of the effect of campaign on revenue, what you're looking for is the effect of these two compared to each other here, and you basically want to take kind of the midpoint, because we had fairly even, had an even amount in terms of the distribution of our A/B test. So taking the midpoint, take the midpoint, this versus the midpoint here, and then the midpoint here versus the midpoint here, and then you take the average of these two and the average of these two, and I think it's pretty easy to see which one on average outperforms the other. Does fishing beat ecotouring, or does ecotouring? That's a main effect. So make sure you have it there. We're not talking about interactions when I ask you about the main effects. So that's question one, and actually it's question one that really seems to throw people. Right here is the answer, and if it's significant, what it's telling us is that something's better than something else. Even something like picture. One of those two pictures, we can't tell from here. We don't have beta coefficients. Got to look at the pictures. One of those two pictures generates more trip conversions than the other, and you've got to figure that out for me. Some of them are kind of close. They're significant and kind of close, and if you miss it, I'll kind of let it go, but that's what the main effects are. Now, let's look at the interactions. So in this particular case, almost all of our two-way interactions are significant. The only one that's not significant is campaign times picture for revenue. So almost all the three-way, even a couple three-way interactions are significant. We're not going to worry about three-way interactions. So we're just going to look at the two-way interactions, look at the two-way interactions. So if we're talking about revenue being the dependent variable, this one, campaign times content, is significant. Campaign times picture is not significant. And content times picture is marginally significant. So let's look, because it's easiest to see, at the interaction between campaign and content for revenue. So basically what we're going to try to do here is determine which of these 4 points not accounting for picture, just looking at campaign versus content, which of the combinations of campaign and content work best. And it's pretty easy to see. For this picture, it's way up here. And for this picture, it's way up here. So the answer here is that fishing combined with utility is the best combination. Now, a pure statistician or somebody that wasn't in business might want to know, what's in the middle, what's the worst. But in business, we're really trying to figure out what's the best thing we could do. And it doesn't really matter. In fact, picture is not significant. The interaction with pictures not significantly related to revenue. So the two best options for us are this one and this one. Makes, as long as we have fishing and utility together, it doesn't matter what picture. These two come out almost the same. Maybe this one's a little bit higher. So now if we look at another one of the interactions, let's look at the interaction, say, between campaign and content on trip conversion. Campaign and content on trip conversions. So if we're looking at campaign and content on trip conversion, what is the best combination? And we're not looking at picture in this particular example. We're looking at two-way interaction between content and campaign. What is the best choice? And it's pretty clear that eco-touring and aesthetics, a campaign that uses eco-touring keywords combined with an ad that focuses on aesthetics. 10 great places, 10 of the most beautiful places, 10 beautiful places, you know, within an hour of Tallahassee, you can only get to with a kayak. I guess you could take, and actually in some of these places you can't even take a boat. You know, the water's so shallow, or it's just, you know, it's too weedy. You know, they've got to go through sections where there's a lot of weeds and stuff like that in the water, and boats, unless you've got like one of these special airboat or some special kind of boat, you can't do it. So you're looking for that combination. I'm looking for the best combination. What is the best combination? And that's what I'm looking for in the interactions. What is the best combination for generating revenue? What is the best combination for generating trip conversions? And what is the best combination? And in several cases, you know, we have a couple different choices that are pretty equal. Like for demo conversion, we've got a couple different choices that are pretty easy. On question 6, you have to give me a succinct account of what the strategy tells you going forward. And I think the best way to organize that answer is to go outcome variable by outcome variable. If like start off, if we're trying to generate revenue, this is what works. If we're trying to get trip conversions, this is what works. If we're trying to get people to sign up for a demonstration day, you know, this choice or this choice seem to be the best. You know, seem to be the two best choices, and they're about equal, or this and this. So that's what you're looking for there. You have to run one more analysis with the same independent variables, but maybe a different outcome variable. And there's some really good choices. I'm curious to see. I'm going to let you go. You can't use profit, cost of goods sold, that kind of thing in that analysis. There's 3 questions from the Excel data that you get a bonus if you get right. It's a good measure of how adept you are at going through a piece of data and figuring stuff out. So if you get 2 out of those 3 right, you get a bonus on question 7. I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to hit stop recording.